The House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria on Wednesday, the 24th day of November 2021, rejected a bill for an act to make Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria justiciable, sponsored by a gentleman from Edo State, and gave ridiculous reasons for rejecting the bill. One of the fundamental problems that are affecting Nigeria is that Nigeria is not a knowledge-based system, it's an anti-intellectual society. And most of the leaders, those in the corridor of power, those handling public institutions and representatives of the people, suffered intellectual poverty. The worst set of them are members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And Nigeria does not have a first-class parliament. The parliamentarian, the vast majority of them, suffers intellectual poverty and are driven only by self-centered pedestrianism and not patriotism, and they lack knowledge in other nations. The Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is non-justiciable by feature of Section 6 of 6C of the Constitution of Nigeria, and there have been a lot of clamor for amendment of such, because only when you have that provision justiciable that the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria at all levels can become responsible in terms of the welfare and security of the citizens, environmental protection, human rights protection, and provision of social security for the betterment of the life of the citizenry. Every civilized country has come to this knowledge and realization that the primary functions of the government, the welfare of the citizens, protections of life and property of the citizens. And when you have a system that the government cannot be held responsible for failure to provide welfare for the citizens, or failure to provide security for the citizen, for failure to protect the environment, for failure to guarantee educational development of a child, and then you have a system that is run in inconsiderate and insensitive manner. The system that crippled the destiny of its citizens. The system that destroyed the intellectual and human potentials, human resources potentials of the citizens. That is a problem with Nigeria. But there is a sector that can easily correct the system, is the parliament. Unfortunately, the parliament seems to be people of no knowledge. All they understand is how to be a big man, and you ask them, why are you a big man? The answer is that I'm a big man because I'm a big man. I have a Mercedes Benz, I have a big house in Lagos, Abuja, and the village. That is the kind of society. Any country that is founded on intellectual poverty and lack of morality institution is bound to fail. I have a great pity for Nigerian citizens, including a generation yet unborn. Now, the leaders and the character of the leaders always reflect the character of the citizen. It is the responsibility of the citizen to make sure that you don't elect non-composed and morons to represent your government. Such a bill was a good opportunity for the representatives members of parliament to help Nigeria following the current situation of insecurity and extreme poverty in the country. Nigerians deserve social security to be guaranteed by the government. And you cannot have that when Chapter 2 of the Constitution that make provisions for such is non-justiciable. And surprisingly, I also understand what they delve into is an area that makes it or demonstrate the fact that the parliamentarians themselves do not understand the meaning of democracy and do not distinguish. It is time for us to distinguish between being educated and having a college degree or college certificate. These people are not educated. Most of them have college certificates. Paper qualification is never a basis for knowledge. Knowledge volume is spoken by productivity and character. I'm surprised to hear that they are making a move to make electionary qualification for governorship and presidents to be higher national diploma and first degree. It shows they don't understand the meaning of democracy. Democracy is a system of government which the citizens govern themselves either directly or through representatives periodically elected by the citizens. The principle of democracy does not welcome discrimination in any form. If you have the right to vote, you have the right to be voted for. Whether you are a spare part seller in Aba, whether you are a taxi driver in Lagos, you have the right to vote, you have the right to be voted for. Civilized nations do not discriminate anybody on grounds of academic qualifications. But what they do, they institutionalize their system in such a way that morons and nincompoops do not seek public offices. For example, the United States of America, nincompoops can seek public offices because the system has been programmed in such a way that you must be intellectually sound for you to come out and say, I want to be governor, I want to be a mayor, which is equivalent to a local government chairman in Nigeria. You must be intellectually sound. You must have some level of intellectual prowess. Otherwise, the system rejects you naturally, but not to breach a principle of democracy. Even the provision of the Constitution of Nigeria that requires good certificate level is undemocratic. It breaches the principle of democracy because the people inserted in the Constitution were not well educated. They don't understand the dynamics of democracy. The problem is Nigeria is run by people who are intellectually bankrupt, and it is time for the citizens to understand this. Try as much as possible to ensure that someone you elect to represent you is intellectually sound and has character that can guarantee productivity, that can guarantee welfare, that can guarantee understanding of issues and ability to provide solutions. Education means having the necessary social, environmental, corporate and public policy experience combined with character that manifests and guarantee productivity for the benefit of the life of the citizenry and the society. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a brief lecture on chat on these issues about the moral and legal approach to guide against investment regret. How to guide against investment regret, moral and legal approach. You can take it that way too. During this week review of mail, I received a letter from an older friend whose wife is a victim of a Ponzi scheme allegedly perpetuated in Nigeria by a 28 years old Nigerian girl whose name is said to be Mrs. Ovaza Imo Jenuza, trading in the style and name of Ovaza Farm Produce Storage Business Limited, a subsidiary of Ovaza Group of Companies Limited, according to the report. In that, my friend, older friend, said that the wife is under depression, deep depression, having sunk her savings into the Ponzi scheme. The alleged fraud. What is more, despite a high-level educational status of the victim, a British trained graduate and a holder of master's degree in business administration, she could not detect a fraud scheme. Having listened to his complaints, and as a principle, or as a matter of principle, I don't get involved in discussions or matters without first doing critical analysis of the situation of the case. So what I did, I asked my older friend if there was any documentation as regard to the investment. Let us examine what is Ponzi scheme in the first place. A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment scheme which generates return for earlier investors and with money taken from later investors, offering an unrealistic returns on investment to unsuspecting clients or investors. The impact of Ponzi scheme is enormous. As of 9-2 March 2021, the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission reported that more than about 3 million Nigerians lost 18 billion to Ponzi scheme operators. That is in Nigeria. It happens everywhere in developed countries and developing countries. But the greater impact is seen in developing countries or least developed countries because of the level of poverty. The causative factors to proliferations of Ponzi scheme. What are the causes of Ponzi scheme drive? The first devastating impact of economic failure of a country. Bad governance, which enhances poverty. Lack of social security system. Most least developed countries like Nigeria, for example, do not have social security system. Increased use of online service to interact has also enhanced the situation or accentuate the situation of Ponzi scheme crisis. What are the specific impacts of Ponzi scheme on the society and the victims? Loss of income is one of it. Victim loss income, dislocation of economic status and amenities, mental health crisis and depressions on the victims, suicidal action, public odium on the reputation of a country or the affected country, marital and family crises such as divorce, domestic violence, effects on children, education and scholarship such as forced school dropout, increase of criminality and indulgence in confusion. Victims may resort to self-help that leads to fetish rituals, murder and mindset of committing fraud against other persons. Burden on law enforcement agencies and judiciary. The law enforcement agents and the judiciary system become overstressed. Emotional crises such as abandonment, resulting from abandonments of by girlfriends and boyfriends, fiancés and fiancées who could no longer endure the struggling and devastating situation, as well as dejection by family members. Also, psychological trauma and outbreak. All these are just some of the specific impact of Ponzi scheme investment. Let's go back to the Uvasa's case, the legal implication on the victims. As I mentioned earlier, my questions to my older friend was whether there was no documentation guiding or concerning the investment. The answer was in affirmative. So I asked if I could be obliged with a copy of such contractual instrument and I promise to keep it confidential, since I hate that the matter is already before law enforcement agency for investigation, as it is sub judice to present such or display such to the public when the matter is before law enforcement agency or judiciary, whichever applicable. It is therefore wrong for an authoritative person to display such material. Fortunately, I was obliged with a copy of the investment contract. In a nutshell, a perusal of the document indicates that there are transparency and exemption clauses demonstrating a force majeure in the contractual instrument between the investor and the alleged scammer. Vaza acted through Vaza Farm Produce Storage Business Limited, a subsidiary of Vaza Group of Companies. A transparency and exemption clauses that demonstrate a force majeure element in that contractual instrument. And investors entered into that contract without scrutinizing those contractual instruments. Listening to the story behind the sucker, there is a likelihood or strong indication that the Vaza girl from outset set out to defraud innocent investors. Her motive may have been to dribble the investors via the Ponzi scheme mechanism to a point that she can successfully divest them of their money to enrich herself, but this remains within the realm of ethical morality reasoning. Even though law is an instrument that sustains justice, law and justice are two different things altogether. Law sometimes do hate legalizations of injustice. This is why you need to know how to deploy the instrumentality of the law to sustain justice against injustice, or to guard against outcomes that turn detrimental to any investment you enter into. I have some very pertinent observation to make about the Vaza investment contractor instrument vis-a-vis the applicability of law. My older friend does not accept my contention that police arrest of the Vaza girl is a mere matter of threat in any trivial sense, for as he pointed out, a crime has been committed and the girl must be jailed. The police has assured them that justice will be done, and her fleet of properties she purchased from investors' money will be sold and monies returned to the owners. According to him, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is also interested in investigating the matter and prosecuting them. But I told him, arrest, torture, and all the extrajudicial administrative protocols do not guarantee a conviction. In actual judicial proceedings, the extension of the general terms will involve a question of the principle of the credentials of the business, which need to be inspected and juxtaposed with the principles of law. I make a valuable point that the rule of coercion, which is common in investigation stage of legal complaints, may be entirely different in pure law proceedings. In the judicial sphere, such is the positions of victim's vulnerability may not be the primary consideration until the questions of pure law and technicality is thoroughly resolved. That is why, in a well-regulated state, restraint from arrest generally usually prevails until thorough investigations and findings whether a case is triable is established. It may be said, however, that many developing countries, such as Nigeria, the operations of law is exceedingly inefficient. That is why law enforcement engages in media prosecution and inordinate arrest before investigation. And that is why powerful citizens and corporations may be able to evade or resist or secure perversions of actual legal rules. The situation, however, by no means old in regard to when a matter has been subjected to judicial proceedings. When good lawyers who understand the law, its tenets and its procedures are involved as defense counsel, there may be risks involved on investment relations criminal trial and civil proceedings to the detriment of the investors or the victims. Even though in a country where intellectual poverty is a dominant consciousness, when a vast majority of the collegiate men and women, including lawyers, are no more different with periwinkle sellers of the 18th century in white market of Calabar in Nigeria. In their reasoning, such a country which is obvious that certain fallacy constantly involved in the reasoning with regards to law making and interpretation, the kind of a primitive system where people jump into conclusions and public sentencing of the accused and suspect whenever there is an arrest. Ultimately, in actual judicial proceeding, truly enough, its substance is an exercise in pure law and legal logic, not immorality, and that is what law is. Therefore, despite the many valid criticisms and circumstances of this Ovisa case, the alleged scammer of over 3 billion naira belonging to investors, innocent citizens who are just trying to earn a living through investment, in judicial proceedings where legal rules are to be equated with the norms and interpreted in a non-contradictory fields of law in meaning and substance, the Ovisa case may walk home, if not at the trial, at the appellate or apex court. This is because of the transparency and exemption clauses which demonstrate the force majeure clause in the contractual instrument she designed for investors. The investors voluntarily enter into such agreement without scrutinizing the terms of the instrument. All the alleged scammer may need to prove is whether it is true that there was a business failure of such circumstance beyond her control. If that is proven, she walked home at last. Investors would then lose out. When that cannot be proven, then she might be criminally liable. What if she can establish that actually there was a business failure caused by circumstances beyond her control, even though such a proof is fabricated or manufactured? So for this purpose, let me introduce you on how to the steps and measures to prevent or overcome investment and contractual losses. That is the preventive measures in overcoming investment and contractual losses. The first measure is an issue of character orientation, overcoming greed. The primary means that any investor, any person who intends to enter into a contractual agreement or investment in any scheme need to do is to learn to overcome over-ambitiousness. This is, however, a moralistic view and not law. It is greed that makes one to believe that if he invests $100, he will now make $1,000 within a month. If he invests 10,000 naira, he will make 100,000 naira, meaning 90% of the investment as return, without analyzing the possibility of such return. If you prefer free things, you are greedy. It means you have greed. It means there is no more difference between you and the scammer. You have the same characteristic that operate in a different frequency and modus operandi. But this is, as I said, a moralistic reason. Let's go to the cardinal measure. The importance of lawyers in your pre-investment and pre-contractual arrangement. Before you sign any contractual instruments, before you purchase any property, undertake any business, investment, or partnership, make sure you involve a lawyer to scrutinize all business and investment instruments before you sign it. Before you sign it, allow a lawyer to scrutinize it. Law, in the most generic and comprehensive acceptation in which the term in its literal meaning is employed, may be said to be a rule laid down for guidance of one who have learned or it or practiced it. Lawyers are trained to understand the tenets, the procedure, and the applicability of law. Even if you are a professor of 10 different specialties and appear highly educated and may not understand adequately the intricacies of law embedded in a contractual instrument or investment scheme, the money you spend in consulting a lawyer at the pre-arrangement, investment arrangement stage is far less in value than what you will spend attempting to recover your losses. That is, if you are lucky enough to survive the tension and the psychological trauma that may result from such heartbreak that may result from such losses. Please find any kind of lawyer, whether a litigation practicing lawyer or academic lawyer. In fact, if you cannot find any lawyer around you and there is a law student, give him as an assignment. He will contact his lecturer who is either doubling as a practicing litigation lawyer or a solicitor or as an academic at the same time, or whether it's just a purely academic lawyer practicing or whatsoever. He will, as we hope, have the basic knowledge of any implication that may arise to the contractual instrument. Just find a lawyer before you sign any instrument, before you buy any property, before you undertake any investment. I hope this message finds you well. Please follow me at Cyprian Edward-Ekpo Dialectics and Treatise at Facebook, at Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to receive more resource materials, especially the print aspect of it, please go to www.unicell.education and click Cyprian Edward-Ekpo Dialectics and Treatise for resource material, intellectual resource material, available in different topics, different dimensions, all together. Thank you and God bless you. Yes, welcome to this session. We are talking about the effects, the right to freedom from toxic, unhealthy, and incompatible marriage and relationship. This is the volume 1. The first case scenario today, among a plethora of causative factors, the toxic, incompatible, and unhealthy relationship, we are taking the first case scenario on perspective disorder. What is perspective disorder? This case scenario gives you the picture of what we mean by perspective disorder. 3 years ago, 2 friends of mine visited me for advice. The problems at hand concern one of them. They are both highly well-placed ladies in the society. They are women of honor and crown, very intelligent lawyers. The first one, Mrs. V, who is a staff in the National Parliament, in the National Assembly in Nigeria, likes to quote scriptures and give mini sermons. She had told Mrs. M that marriage is for better or for worse, that since her husband had asked her to choose between accepting a United Nations scholarship offer for doctoral research fellowship that was accompanied with a well-paid income, that Mrs. M had no choice but to shun the doctoral research fellow offer to keep her marriage. Mrs. M's dream has always been to work in the United Nations system since her undergraduate era. She has been passionate about working with the United Nations system. She actually chose to undertake a master's degree program in international law and diplomacy as added advantage to her dream pursuit, although she had a well-paid job serving as a manager in an oil servicing company in the southern part of Nigeria. She never felt fulfilled. Opportunity then presented itself. She won a doctoral research fellowship in the United Nations, offered by the United Nations system with much welfare package incomparable to her present job, instant job, and complementing her dreams and passion over time. They had she together with the husband had a 7-year-old son. She discussed with the husband that she was traveling with a 7-year-old son, but the husband objected that the son was too young to be exposed to foreign culture. He insisted that it was wrong to train a child of 7 years in the United States soil. Maybe the husband had a good point at that. Mrs. M suggested to keep the son in her mother or mother-in-law's care, and both mothers agreed to take care of the son until he returns from her studies and fellowship program, or the son relocate. The husband still objected. The problem was not the son. It was about Mrs. M leaving Nigeria for the United States when such plan was not initiated by the husband. Mrs. M then suggested they could all travel to New York, and the husband, being a professional, will find a job there. But the husband insisted that Mrs. M must choose between the marriage and the doctoral research fellowship program. Having assimilated advice of Mrs. V, which was in support of Mrs. M's husband's position, Mrs. M was not convinced. She told Mrs. V she was coming to solicit my advice. Having listened to the issue and evaluated Mrs. M's husband's perspective, this was my advice. I asked Mrs. M to repeat and affirm that the husband asked her to choose between a marriage and a career. She said yes, and I asked her to tell the husband. I advised her to tell the husband to choose between her and his decision. She asked why. I retorted, because you are in a wrong marriage. A real marriage is supposed to be a partnership, a friendship, and not slavery. No one is doing anyone a favor by marrying him or her. Marriage is partnership, a contract between two persons, a man and woman who love themselves and agreed to form a family. Your husband's action, I told Mrs. M, and command is a breach of your fundamental human rights. I revealed Mrs. M to the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, adopted in 1979, and other international human rights law, which her husband grossly violated. I also told Mrs. M that I just realized that she married, and was unfortunate, she married a man of low potential. And when a woman marries a man of low potential, she will definitely go down to zero potential, because in nature, a woman cannot be above the man in extension of energy. Husband and wife complement each other without being above each other. My advice to Mrs. M was to choose a career and leave the marriage if the husband insists on the solutions of marriage on grounds of her choosing a career advancement. Then Mrs. Fee jumped into my advisory resourcefulness. Mrs. Fee told Mrs. M not to take my advice. According to Mrs. M, it is unbiblical to divorce except on ground of adultery. She quoted a verse in the Bible that a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to a woman, and they shall become one blood and one flesh. And that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And I told Mrs. M that the Bible did not refer to one blood and one flesh in the context of biological DNA, because a man and a woman can never be one blood and one flesh in the context of biological DNA, seeing they are from different families altogether. That passage refers to the child that the man and the woman brings up together. I also quoted a passage in the Bible credited to the greatest master of all time, Jesus Christ, that says, if your right hand cause thee to stumble, cut it off, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, than the whole body go to hell. I told Mrs. M that any partner, marital or mere relationship or courtship, that stand against your relationship with God, that is your spirituality. Stand against your spirituality, that's your relationship with God, or stands against your career progress, or stand against your relationship with your biological aboriginal family, such like your mother, is the right hand that causes you to stumble, and such is an incompatible marriage or relationship infused in perspective disorder. Then I asked Mr. M, what if you sacrifice the doctoral fellowship program for marriage, and in less than 3 years the marriage still collapsed? Then Mrs. M said, God forbid. That cannot happen. She has to obey her husband. A few months ago, Mrs. M contacted me. She was deeply depressed, and I asked what the matter was. She said she needed a good divorce lawyer. I quickly referred her to a friend whose expertise is concentrated in divorce matter. She asked, why didn't I care to know what happened? I retorted that 3 years ago when I tried to counsel her, I knew for certain that our marriage would someday collapse. Not to her fault, but that was as a result of a perspective disorder, which makes a wrong marriage. I had no interest in listening to her, but she managed to tell me that the husband impregnated her best friend's daughter, and they all conspired to destroy her life. That the husband was the first to file for divorce, and she is going to be a defendant, and the husband was coming after her properties. When I look at the scenario, I have sympathy for Mrs. M, for she listened to Mrs. Fee. When the mind joins forces with the mind of others, it creates a phenomenon called synergisms of hope and expectation that becomes the sense of evaluation towards reality. That is the typical issue that affected Mrs. M. Mrs. M lost the fellowship, doctoral research fellowship program sponsored by the United Nations system with a well-paid income because she wanted to keep her marriage and listened to the scripture of Mrs. Fee to satisfy the marriage in the context of the religious mythology. Now the situation is, who lost at the end? This is one of the impacts of incompatible and unhealthy relationships. In the Western culture, the Christian Bible is considered to be one of the most ancient of the excellent history books, which has continued to serve as a reference work for humanity that expects protection against profanity. No religious or philosophical thought has been able to disprove the concept of marriage and relationship between two opposite genders as stipulated in the Bible. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, biblical Genesis is recorded, and God said, "Let us make man in our own image and likeness, male and female he created them." Science in all times has all agreed to the fact that every material manifestation there must be a union of positive and negative polarities or vibrations or forces. Electricity and humanity are typical examples of such nature processes, which requires a combination of positive and negative vibration, a duality manifesting the third dimension of evolutions and continuation of all nature. Both material and spiritual scientists hold that creation in its entirety being the work of a universal intelligence that has not, in all textures, been without a duality form manifesting a third dimension. That in every aspect of creation there is a positive and negative polarities. These conceive the rationale behind the union of man and woman, which in legal terms is called marriage or nuptial partnership. Science has proven that creation will be stagnant, or humanity may not continue without the union of man and woman, and that man is incapable of determining the legal restriction of the force that guide or propel such union. Here come the terms of love relationship. Nevertheless, in social life, the discontents of our age are sharply aligned by the emerging ideologies and idiosyncrasies with which men seek to instill the clamoring of their own souls and running the affairs of love have been witnessed to have sunk some individual personalities to dead knell of human hopes and unrest. These new realities, of course, have made modern relationships saddled with disillusions instead of joy and deepened by a dilemma of two worlds in every individual personality decision about whom or she may choose as a life partner, inflamed by the insecurities of the intervening incidents that obstruct peace of mind and finding confirmations of true love as the cases fairly at a bleak, uncertain future. The patterns of fear is now a familiar one to every man and woman ever since the beginning of time, loomed large in the contemporary era where love has been largely replaced by selfishness. The key word you take from this particular issue, as we will discuss in details about the effects of perspective disorder in relationship, is the choice in a life partner is a very sensitive issue. And the rights of every individual in any relationship is both legally and spiritually guaranteed. As everyone, man and woman,
are of equal polarities, and no one have the right to destroy the potentials, the joy, the peace, and the good of another. Because marriage, though is a very important institution, is not slavery. Now we will discuss in details in our next lecture what comes after this kind of scenario, as we will have other scenarios to bring up to you. What will you do if you were Mrs. M in choosing between the marriage and your career prospect? Did Mrs. N who has who asked Mrs. N to shunt this fellowship, doctoral fellowship offer for marriage, right? Was my advice to Mrs. M that she should ask the husband to choose between her and his decision, right? I will want to have your view in this issue. Follow me at Cyprian Edward-Ekpo Dialectics and Treatise. Get to the questionnaire section and comment section and drop your view on this issue, as we will discuss again on Monday from this point, before I offer my final opinion on this very issue. Thank you, and God bless you.
Let's have a discussion on the dangers of religious fanaticism and its impact on peace, development, and human rights values. Lesson from Ms. Deborah Samuel Jacobus, mother by Islamic fundamentalists. Why should anyone be held accountable for someone else's ideology? Should Buhari be punished for religious rules he's not associated with nor support? Last night I was watching some videos that some friends in northern Nigeria sent to me. The killing and roasting of Mrs. Deborah, the late student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, and aftermath riot by the Muslim faithful in Seguri state of Nigeria. The incidents are quite appalling and heart-wrenching. Upon a plethora reaction to the cruel murder of Mrs. Deborah Samuel Yakubu, the demised student, one of the comments in response to the Nation newspaper publication of Mrs. Deborah's funeral that touches my heart deeply is a statement by one Chris Joe via Facebook. It is pertinent to quote the prayers of the Facebook app Kisijo. He says, he prayed as follows: so these guys succeeded in sending this young girl to an early grave. Nigeria, why? I will keep saying this. Father Lord, I beg you in the name of God, when I die, don't bring me back to this country again if truly there is reincarnation. Instead of bringing me back to Nigeria, just make me a tree, mango tree specifically. Thank you. Amen. I'm sure I'm quoting exactly what Chris George said. The above quoted prayer offered by the Facebooker Chris demonstrate the level of frustration visited on Nigeria since 2015. How bad governance has destroyed the very fabric of Nigeria's unity and progress through enhancement of agro-religious antics and insecurity. When citizens pray to God, asking that if there is reincarnation, and they do not want to share in a particular country in their next life,
Rather, if they can't be sent to another country, they prefer to be turned into a mango tree. This indicates that the state of frustration felt by the citizenry has touched their very souls. The Nigerian state principal authority has been shamelessly, utterly powerless by not interfering within security siege, such as the one that took the life of a young Nigerian girl, Miss Deborah, and afraid that in attempts to prosecute such siege, he will entangle himself and his cavalry on a difficult ground associated to religious ideology, resolved to issue a pretended flight order of proof while preparing the way for some stratagem to further bolster religious extremism, which of course represents the very ideology of the general theme of the Nigerian state. Nothing might come out further than mere arrays of the murderers and sponsor protests for their release. In a few weeks, the whole story will end and Mrs. Deborah is gone forever. My heartfelt condolences to our family, parents, and loved ones. Conscious of the weakness and lack of sincerity of purpose of the state authority, religious leaders, both of Christianity and Islam, continue to indoctrinate their followers in a most heinous manner, while Christian leaders focus on indoctrination for pecuniary and material wealth accumulation, which requires undermining other Christian denominations and taking them hellbound so as to gather members from them to their own for tithe and offering. The Muslim leaders focus on indoctrination for terrorism and jihad. This caused simultaneous movement in different directions and accentuate poverty and violence upon the state and our citizenry. What is religion? Religion is simply the belief in and worship of a supernatural controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. It is a particular system of faith deployed as socio-cultural system of designated practice of beliefs, morals, and ethics for the purpose of spiritual connectivity and spiritual growth of an individual soul. Spirituality is not a thing to apply on others or to show others, but to apply within oneself. It is the whole being's essence, while religion is an intellectual exercise that guides the method of spirituality. A spiritualized religion will be evident in every word, every deed, and inner reality with an outward positive character that benefits the soul personality, and humanity at large. It shows therefore that since spirituality is a sacred personal belief system and practice of an individual soul based on his personal conviction, no one has a right to intervene or question such personal conviction of an individual, even when that individual shares the same faith with him. No one has the right to condemn a spiritual conviction of another human being, because spirituality is purely a private business. Let's have a discussion on the dangers of religious fanaticism and its impact on peace, development, and human rights values. Lesson from Ms. Deborah Samuel Jacobus murder by Islamic fundamentalists. Why should anyone be held accountable for someone else's ideology? Should Buhari be punished for religious rules he's not associated with nor support? Last night I was watching some videos that some friends in northern Nigeria sent to me. The killing and roasting of Mrs. Deborah, the late student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, and aftermath riot by the Muslim faithful in the secular state of Nigeria. The incidents are quite appalling and heart-wrenching. Upon a plethora reaction to the cruel murder of Mrs. Deborah Samuel Yakubu, the demised student, One of the comments in response to the Nation newspaper publication of Mrs. Deborah's funeral that touches my heart deeply is a statement by one Chris C. Jaw via Facebook. It is pertinent to quote the prayers of the Facebook app Chris C. Jaw. He says, he prayed as follows: so these guys succeeded in sending this young girl to an early grave. Nigeria, why? I will keep saying this. Father Lord, I beg you in the name of God, when I die, don't bring me back to this country again if truly there is reincarnation. Instead of bringing me back to Nigeria, just make me a tree, mango tree specifically. Thank you. Amen. I'm sure I'm quoting exactly what Chris George said. The above quoted prayer offered by the Facebooker Chris George demonstrate the level of frustration visited on Nigeria since 2015. How bad governance has destroyed the very fabric of Nigeria's unity and progress through enhancement of agro-religious antics and insecurity. When citizens pray to God, asking that if there is reincarnation, and they do not want to share in a particular country in their next life, rather if they can't be sent to another country, they prefer to be turned into a mango tree. This indicates that the state of frustration felt by the citizenry has touched their very souls. The Nigerian State Principal Authority has been shamelessly, utterly powerless by not interfering with insecurity siege, such as the one that took the life of a young Nigerian girl, Miss Deborah, and afraid that in attempts to prosecute such siege, he will entangle himself and his cavalry on a difficult ground associated to religious ideology, resolved to issue a pretended flight order of proof while preparing the way for some stratagem to further bolster religious extremism, which of course represents the very ideology of the general theme of the Nigerian state. Nothing might come out further than mere arrays of the murderers and sponsor protests for their release. In a few weeks, the whole story will end and Mrs. Deborah is gone forever. My heartfelt condolences to our family, parents and loved ones. Conscious of the weakness and lack of sincerity of purpose of the state authority, religious leaders, both of Christianity and Islam, continue to indoctrinate their followers in a most heinous manner, while Christian leaders focus on indoctrination for pecuniary and material wealth accumulation, which requires undermining other Christian denominations and taking them hellbound so as to gather members from them to their own for tithe and offering. The Muslim leaders focus on indoctrination for terrorism and jihad. This caused simultaneous movement in different directions and accentuate poverty and violence upon the state and our citizenry. What is religion? Religion is simply the belief in and worship of a supernatural controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. It is a particular system of faith deployed as socio-cultural system of designated practice of beliefs, morals and ethics for the purpose of spiritual connectivity and spiritual growth of an individual soul. Spirituality is not a thing to apply on others or to show others, but to apply within oneself. It is the whole being's essence. While religion is an intellectual exercise that guides the method of spirituality, spiritualized religion will be evident in every word, every deed, and inner reality with an outward positive character that benefits the soul personality, and humanity at large. It shows, therefore, that since spirituality is a sacred personal belief system and practice of an individual's soul based on his personal conviction, no one has a right to intervene or question such personal conviction of an individual, even when that individual shares the same faith with him. No one has the right to condemn a spiritual conviction of another human being, because spirituality is purely a private business. Let's look at the legal guarantee of the right to freedom of religion, conscience, and thought, and the right to life. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, guarantees the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. And Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966, guarantees the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. The United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of all forms of intolerance and of discrimination based on religion or belief, that the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 36/55 passed with consensus on November 25, 1981. And its purpose. Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights provides that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of persons. Article 6 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966, recognizes the inherent right of every person to life, adding that this right shall be protected by law, that no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. The law is right, that everyone has a right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. The right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom of his choice, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief, teaching and practice and observance. Freedom to manifest one religion or belief may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect public safety, order, health, or morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of other persons. Pari material to these international law provisions, above cited are the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, Ratification and Enforcement Act, the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. Meaning these same laws are applicable domestically in Nigerian territory. The right to life is a superior form of human right that falls within the octopus of non-derogability of human rights, that no other right shall be used to quash the right to life.